Hi guys, today we're going to be turning this carrot cake into one of the sloths from Zootopia. So I've printed off a picture of Flash. So my carrot cake is just a 5-inch cake, so it's quite a small one. I've not worried about levelling it off because we want it quite rounded anyway. And then I've just put it on a 7-inch cake board. So I'm going to cut out my picture of Flash. I think he's called Flash. And I'm just going to place it over the cake so that I get a rough idea of where to put my marks. So I'm just holding it over, working out where his nose wants to be because I want to cut just down the side of that and hollow it out a little bit. So just marking on the eyes as well, and we'll cut those out. So we'll leave him with 2 eye sockets. You don't need to take loads out for this. And what I'm going to do is the cake that we've taken out the eye socket, I'm now sticking on where his nose would be so that it's slightly risen, so that we don't do a lot of shaping here. And then what you're going to do is just cover it in buttercream. So I just use butter and icing sugar for my buttercream, but I'll put a recipe in the links or in the description box below. So once you've done that all the way over, just make sure you've not got it all over the cake board. Just scrape any excess off. Now it isn't the neatest buttercreaming, but I'm not going to worry too much because I'm going to smooth it out. So I'm just using Icewise fondant for this. You can use whatever fondant you want. I just find this one's quite good for using on shaped cakes like this. So dye it a pale grey, keep it really quite pale, and you're going to roll it out so it's big enough to place it over the cake. I'm just going to press that down gently with my hands, paying particular attention to those eye sockets, making sure it's rubbed into those hollows. And again, just pulling my finger under the bit that will become his nose and mouth to just create that line down the side. So once you've smoothed that round, we're just going to trim all the extra off from around the edge. And I'm just going to start to cut up his face a little bit more. It just makes it a little bit easier for positioning things on the cake. So I've more or less sort of cut it down the side of the nose. Now I've turned the cake to the side in case it looks like I'm drawing his face on the wrong way. So I'm holding one half on and I'm just marking down the side of the nose and where his mouth is going to be. I'm just pressing a little bit deeper, and again around where the mouth is. So I'm using this as a stencil to mark in any points that need putting on. So let's start to draw in the mouth, creating a big dint. Try and sort of hollow it out a little bit, but obviously not too much that you go through to the cake. I'm just using a modelling tool for this. I'll put links to anything that I use in the video in the description box below. So I'm just cutting out his little nose now because we'll make that as a separate piece. But what I'm going to do is position it where it wants to go, and I'll just draw around that. So I'm just going to indent that a little bit, just so that when I make the nose I can slot it into that space. So I've just dyed a deep grey for the nose, and I'm shaping it so it matches the little paper cutout that we've got, and then you're going to push that firmly in place in that dint that we've made. I'm just adding a little dint at the bottom of his nose, and then taking some more of the grey, and I've mixed the darker grey and a lighter grey together. We're just going to put that just above his nose, almost like a rounded triangular shaped piece is probably the best way I can think of to describe it. Give it a good push down, make sure it meets the top of his nose, and then I'm just going to stick the nostrils in there with the end of my modelling tool. Cutting out the eyes next. Again, once we've cut these out, we'll draw around them. So position them where you know they want to go, and we'll just create a little line around the edge, again with our Dresden tool. I'm just pushing it in just a little bit more within those lines we've drawn, setting the eye socket a bit further back in the head, and just repeat for the other one. So I've dyed a little bit of pink. We only need a small bit of a teardrop shape, and we're going to push that into the mouth that we've created the space for. Let's give a good push in, and then I'm just pushing his chin, his bottom lip upwards a little bit so there's no gaps. Just creating a little bit of a line on the side of his eye. This is just for guidelines for where the black area goes to on the picture. So when we paint him up, we'll know where to put the colours. We're going to use the sharp end of the modelling tool to draw fur on now. So I'm starting in the centre of the forehead, and we're just brushing outwards at each angle. Just look at your picture to see which directions the fur does go in as well, and look for where the fur is longer and shorter. So on his nose it's much shorter than up near the top of his head. This is the bit that's quite time consuming out of the whole cake really, just the putting on little hairs. So I've sped mine up. So we've done that all over. Now don't worry about the long pieces of hair on his head because we'll add those at the end. For the colour, I've got black, a brown and an aubergine. Now I'm mainly going to use the black, but I'm going to add just a tiny bit of the brown and the aubergine So we just want to keep these colours dry. Again, I'll put links in the description box for what it is I'm using. I'm going to start with the darkest points. So can you see at the side of his eye, it's quite almost black, but we don't want him to look like a panda with completely black eyes, so that's why we've added a bit of the aubergine and brown. So I'm concentrating now on the mouth where it's also quite dark. We'll do the other eye. So now we'll work on the nose. Anywhere that you want to look like light is falling on, don't paint over, leave that as it is and it will just look like a light patch. Using the same technique, we're going to brush him on some eyebrows. Again, make sure the brush is still dry. So I'm going to do under his chin, just a little bit darker as well for shading. So once you're happy that you've got enough shading on his face, we're going to make the eyes. So I've got some white and I'm just holding this against the actual paper cutout so that I can see that it's the same size and shape. And you're going to do this for both eyes. And then we're sticking them on. I've just used a little dab of water for mine, but you can use edible glue if you prefer. And then I'm separating his eye, the paper one, so that I can see the size of the eyelids. And what I'm going to do is just mark the line where it comes to on there, so I know where to put my fondant one. I'll do the same on the other eye as well. So I've got a circle cutter for the eye, or for the pupil, and rather than cutting fondant out, I'm just going to push this in to make an indentation, and then this line that we've indented, we're going to follow around with some food colouring. So I'm just going to paint this up in a chestnut brown. So start on the outside edge, it'll be quite dark on the outside edge, and then as you paint further into the middle of the circle, you can bring it so it becomes slightly paler. So to shade, just add more water to your brush so that the brown is diluted to get a paler colour. Now for the centres of the eyes, we're not going to paint them on, we're going to actually use black fondant. So I've rolled some black out nice and thin, taking a smaller round cutter, cut out the two circles, and then we're going to put those in the centre of the brown bits of the eyes that you've just painted on. I'm just going to trim any of that goes above that line that we've made where the eyelid was. And then we're going to put a tiny, tiny dot of white fondant now in each of those eyes. Give it a good push down. So eyelids, taking some grey, push it so it's the same shape as the top of the eye. So line it up with your paper and then cut that down to size. I'm going to push this on the top of his eye. Just make sure it's pushed around the sides. You don't want any of the white sort of peeping out from the top or the sides of the eyelid. So he does have furry eyelids, so I'm just adding a couple of little fur marks quickly before I dust this one up. So we're going to dust the colour back on there. You can put quite a bit on for the eyelids because they're quite dark so far. Now I'm going to add a dab of water along the very bottom edge of the eyelid. I've got some black fondant that I've rolled into a long thin piece, and that is just going to go along the bottom of his eyelid. Now it's quite difficult to see with it being black, so any extra over the side of the eyelid I'm just going to trim off, and then I'm using my knife to put little lines coming all the way down so that it looks like he's got little eyelashes. And I'm just going to repeat the same on the other eye. Give a good push on, trim off any extra that you don't need. So for the hair, now this is where I apologise, I forgot to press record and realised as I was finishing it that the video wasn't recording. So I've created some long sausage shaped pieces of the light grey, and all I've done is run the modelling tool through them to create little lines and then push them onto his head. Then for the centre, we're just going to roll some little individual pieces and try with your modelling tool, see if you can push them into the face so the hair sort of comes gradually and joins with the fur on his forehead. So with the hair, once you've got as many pieces on as you want, you're going to add a little bit of dusting. Don't go too dark on the hair as it's a little bit paler on the top of his head, so just put a few little sort of shadowy bits in there. So just putting in any extra little lines that you think need to go in, sort of smoothing his hair into his face. So there he is finished. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and you can check out my other Zootopia videos. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video and would like to see more, please click on the images of the other videos suggested. Also, please do subscribe to my channel using the button at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also visit my cake website and my Facebook page to see more cakes and ideas.